Welcome to the Gamut of Performance Podcast, episode 27. On this episode of the podcast, I get to talk with friend and mentor, Liane Blyn. I was lucky enough to cross paths with Liane when she was the director at Appalachian State University. Since then, she has gone to the other ASU, Arizona State University. On this episode of the podcast, we dive into her journey coming up as a strength coach, what caused her to get into it, her motivation, some of the successes that she's had, and some of the things that she has found to ring true across the board in strength and conditioning. There's a lot of great nuggets in this podcast from someone who has been both an athlete and a coach. So without further ado, here is Coach Liane Blyn. Coach Blyn, thank you so much for your time. Really looking forward to catching up and talking about, kind of the stuff you've been working on and the stuff you've been into. So for the listeners at home, will you tell us a little bit about your background, your motivation, and kind of where you are currently?
Background. So scary thing to say is I'm going on year 23 of being a strength and conditioning coach. So I'm kind of old now.
Stop.
Well traveled.
Yeah, there you go.
Well traveled. I've been at 4 different universities. I'm at Arizona State now. This is my second stint at Arizona State. I started at, where did I start at? I can't remember. It's been so long. No, Northern Arizona is where I went to grad school. First position was at Nevada, Reno. Then I was at Boston College, Arizona State as an assistant. Left ASU, went to the private sector for about 8 years and worked at a high school, owned my own business. Got back into, had the opportunity to work with you at App State for about 18 months or so. Then I came back to Arizona State as the head of Olympic sports along with Rich Wenner. So
awesome.
That's my in a nutshell where I've been on the block. But
no, I like it, kind of bouncing around, getting a lot of good experience though, and learning a lot from the people around you nonetheless. So will you talk a little bit about your motivation in the profession, what made you want to get into it, and what drives you every day?
What drives me every day is something I want to get better, personally and professionally. Mm-hmm. And the student athletes that I work with, I want to see them get better personally and professionally and athletically. Mm-hmm. So it's a great position for me, or a great job for me. Mm-hmm. I started out as an athletic training major when I was in high school, or actually in my undergrad, where I started in high school. I wanted to be an athletic trainer, so that's what I started with. When I kind of finished my undergrad, and I decided that I wanted to make things happen rather than sit around and wait for things to happen. Mm. Like, I got certified as an ATC, and tape and ankles just really wasn't in the cards for me. Like, I liked it, but it wasn't like that's what I want to do every day. Yeah. I trained when I was in high school, lifted for sports. I played field hockey and softball in high school and college, and again, my age, I graduated in 1990, so probably before you were born.
We won't comment on that. We'll leave that part out.
So, weight room was a universal kind of thing. So I went to the gym and met some people there, and they kind of guided me along as far as working out and training. And I decided that I really liked it a lot. And, just took that to being in college, and still went to the gym at 4:00 in the morning before field hockey practice in the afternoon, and was a little bit OCD, a little bit psycho, I would say, at that age, and I'm probably still the same now.
I could agree, maybe a little bit, maybe just a touch.
You saw it.
I love it. Awesome. So how has being an athletic trainer or athletic training student influenced you and your outlook with strength and conditioning now?
It actually has helped a lot. So I understand injuries, I understand reconditioning, I understand the rehab process. So it's really easy for me to communicate with athletic trainers on staff and say, okay, this person is in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. This is what they can and cannot do. Collaboration with your staff is huge. So it doesn't matter what level you're at, Division 1, Division 2, high school, college setting, professional setting, you have to have great collaboration and conversation with your athletic trainers, because you need to know when athletes are ready to get back. So having that background in athletic training has been huge for me, for sure.
That's awesome. I love it when, people can take stuff from different professions and pour it into what they are now, because it makes everything so much better. It completes their understanding, People can be so much one-dimensional in their thinking. So it's refreshing to see, how it has helped you now.
It's huge. It's absolutely huge.
Yeah.
It's absolutely huge. challenge. And I think being multidimensional in a lot of different aspects helps you just grow as a professional.
Yeah.
So.
No, I agree. Will you elaborate a little bit on your time at the Poliquin Institute?
Paul Quinn, rest in peace, Charles.
Yeah.
I knew Charles way back when I was at Boston College. I was at Boston College 99 to 2003. So my first time I ever met Charles was at a strongman clinic that we actually held at Boston College. Art McDermott and him put it on. And that's really when I met Art McDermott as well, was way back then. And I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. I'll do the strongman clinic. And, hey, they're using our facility. Why don't I hop in? So we're doing some grip work and stuff. And I think I freaked him out because I was like, we're doing a hubcap grip thing.
Yeah.
And everyone in the class was about 20 or 25 people. And most of them were guys in the class.
Yeah.
And I was like, it was one of three to fit, to end. So there was only two guys ahead of me that actually picked up more weight off the hubcap than me.
Yeah.
So it was actually pretty interesting. So I'm not normal, and I think he figured that out way back then.
Story of your life, right?
Yeah, story of my life. And I used to give him shit for having skinny legs and no huge jack forearms.
Yeah.
And he was just jealous of my legs, my hamstrings that sag like this. Jealous of my hamstrings. So, but I will honestly say he's one of the smartest guys I've ever met in my life. Intimidating, at times, but one of the smartest guys. He's definitely going to be missed. I mean, he's, I would say, a legend when it comes down to his knowledge and, the number of languages he spoke. And, he could rattle off research articles that, went to this purpose or whatever. Supplements, he was the king of supplements. He was German volume training. So I think it's something that will, continue, his legacy will continue to live on with his, German volume comp, the strongman training, his whole love of hypertrophy and, and things like that. So he's definitely going to be missed. And I think all younger upcoming strength coaches should read his stuff because he can gain a lot of knowledge out of it. I utilize a lot of his stuff, not every piece of his stuff, because I think there's a time and place for his stuff when it comes to training athletes, off season and things like that. Doing the German volume training 10 by 10. Hey, it's a great off season thing. Yeah. But in season, I'm not going to do anything crazy like that. Tempo is he's huge on tempo, and we had tempos, the pairing, the A's and the B's, and that's something that he kind of coined way back. And a lot of programs now follow with the pairing of exercises and stuff. Yeah. So. He'll definitely be missed.
No, I agree.
Hate him because there's, love him or hate him.
Yeah.
There's people out there that, love him. People out there that aren't very fond. But one smart dude.
Yeah, that's one thing that nobody can deny, right? If you read his writing, it's just so in depth. A lot of the stuff, it's just over a lot of people's heads. So you can just tell how intelligent he is, even from one of the shorter articles. So. Definitely had a big effect on the profession. I think that's one of the things a lot of the younger generation are starting to miss. I'm in charge of the internship program, and so talking to some of these people, you mentioned something oh, what's that? You know what I mean? What's that? And you're like, oh shoot, you need to get into this stuff if you ever want to have a full understanding. So I think
you need to read, like you said, younger generation. I think you need to read and think outside the box, and everything you get in class, it's just the be-all, end-all. Yeah. So in class, they can only focus on so much. And you could have a professor that's, hey, this is straight linear periodization, and never really truly touch on conjugate method or, block periodization, or however you do it, or tier system. You could get a professor that's so narrow-minded in wanting to teach just one way. And sometimes, they don't talk about, some of the good stuff that's out there.
Yeah. No, I agree. Will you also elaborate a little bit on your time at Parisi?
So Parisi, when I left Arizona State the first time, I went to Parisi. It was actually Poliquin Performance Center first. Okay. So Art McDermott opened up 180. Well, it was Poliquin Performance Center first, and then it ended up turning into 180 in Parisi Speed School because of the climate of people and the content of people that we were training. So it was young kids and things like that. So some of Charles's stuff really didn't apply to young 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds, and we thought Parisi would mesh better with that. Speed training, change direction, agility, that kind of stuff, programming. So, Bill Parisi, phenomenal guy. Martin Rooney was the lead,
Okay.
And John Cirillo. So that whole crew there, phenomenal. Like the business side. So if you're looking to run a business, that's how you run a business. Whether you follow Training for Warriors from Martin, he's done a phenomenal job, or Bill Parisi with Parisi Speed School, phenomenal job on the business side of things. And I think some people think, hey, I'm going to leave the college or wherever I'm at working for somebody and go open my own place. I will tell you, it is not easy to go open your own place. Like one thinks, as an employee, they can do, I can do this, I can do that. It is not easy at all. And I've been through it. And there's a lot of inner workings to it. But Bill Parisi was phenomenal in terms of the packaging of the Parisi. I learned all my speed stuff, honestly, through Parisi. I think that's one thing in college we don't do enough of, even as strength coaches in the profession. I don't think, and it's getting better now. Back when I started, it was all about the weight room. Like there was no talk, and coaches, whether it's lacrosse or field hockey or football, not so much football, but any other sport, basketball, the sport coach did all the speed work and all the conditioning. There really wasn't speed work. It was all conditioning and running your ass off until, you were dead, basically, and running suicides and all that stuff. Now as a profession has grown, strength coaches are doing now more of the speed work, the conditioning, setting up actual in conjunction with what you're doing in the weight room, and not just, everything kind of runs parallel together in terms of what you're doing in the weight room and what you're doing on the field, instead of, hey, I'm going to go bag these kids on the ice or out on, out running, and then expect them to come in next day and be fresh to squat at 90% or whatever. So there's a lot more communication going on now that we get to do all of that. But again, that's where, learn from John Cirillo and Martin Rooney, all the speed mechanics, running mechanics. And, I read a little bit here and there and learn some other stuff along the way, but I honestly stick with their basics for the most part. Because I think if you can teach the basics and you teach the basics well and then learn the basics, they're going to get better. They're going to get better. And you can't be too elaborate, especially with hockey players or soccer players. I think you got to keep it the basics and master the basics and do them well. Now, about track and field, that's where track and field coaches come into play. Working on that's their expertise.
I think it's important to note that a lot of the things that are coming out now are just the basics repackaged. So that's a big point. Is there's not really anything. There's a lot of stuff coming out, right? And everyone's like, oh, it's new. And like we said, younger strength coaches like, oh man, this is all new. But if you look back at the old stuff, it's the same old stuff. Everything, shock method, plyometrics. We're all going back to the same stuff. Like that super training mindset of like, oh man, we don't know what this is, but that's what it is. It goes right back to the beginning, and it's just repackaged in a different way, and now it looks new and fancy. Yep.
And no one, everyone wants to claim it as new, but really everyone steals things from everybody else. You said it's repackaged. It's just said a different way. The Russians were doing the conjugate method way long before it came out. Here. So,
no, definitely.
It's definitely repackaged. It's not a whole lot of new ideas going on out there. There are new ideas, but dumb as shit ideas.
Yeah, we'll leave that for a different podcast. Yeah, no, we could talk about that for a while. There's a lot of crazy stuff out there, but
I mean, even for me, like I've seen stuff regurgitated, and I call it functional jackass 5.0. Come out with new versions of hey, you should only you should never back squat, you should only front squat, and then hey, you should never overhead press, and you should only do this, and it's to sell shit. That's what drives me nuts. Is people are just trying to go out there and sell their stuff over and over, come up with a new concept that really isn't new. So
sounds like you're talking about a specific person, huh?
Could be.
Fair enough. Moving on, right? Just to leave that one out where it is. So you touched on it a little bit, but what's your advice for coaches that are thinking of going into the private sector or into the college sector? What's your advice for them trying to find their path?
I would say intern and get as much experience as you possibly can at multiple settings. Some people say, I was talking to a former former intern, and he's like, I think I want to go into the private sector. I think I want to own my own business. And I'm like, you need to go, and he's only been in the college setting. I'm like, you need to go intern in the private sector and go see what it's like first.
Yeah.
Decide, because it's way different than the collegiate setting. And if you were, your mindset was college, you have to take a step back in a lot of different ways to actually deal with the private sector. And there's a lot of different inner workings when it comes to the private sector. But interns need to get as much experience as possible. And the sucky thing is, they're unpaid internships for the most part, for majority of things. But the experience you get is invaluable.
Yeah.
Absolutely 100% invaluable. I just had a former student athlete reach out to me. He's at a D3 school, and he's like, I need to get an internship in the college setting. I'm like, well, what is your goal of where you want to be? He's like, I want to be big time athletics. I want to be Power 5.
Yeah.
And I said, you need to intern at a Power 5. And it's like, well, it's so far, I don't know where I'm going to go. He's like, what if I intern at a D3? It's not going to help you interning at a D3 or interning at this point. Like, all that experience at a D3, high school, whatever, is great. But if your aspiration is to become at a Power 5, to go to a Power 5 school, you need to go intern at a Power 5 school so you know what it's like, one, and coaches get to know who you are. If I'm looking at a resume and I have a person that doesn't have any Power 5 experience on their resume, it's probably not going to check high on my list. Go through, whether it's assistants or whatever. So being at that high level and understanding what that level is, definitely need to intern at all different levels. And that's where you aspire to be. And he may go, I know he is going to a Power 5 school now to do an internship. It's 400 hours. And, he may go there and decide, what, I really liked working at the high school with you. I really liked working in the private sector. It could be, but I would say go to every single level. I had a person reach out to me the other day, looking for advice, and she's like, I'm a paid intern, part-time position, paid at a Power 5 school. But now, I have a job opportunity to go to a small D2 school. It's a pay cut. It's this and that. She couldn't get a full-time job. Like, full-time jobs weren't coming. And I'm like, don't do it. Stay where you're at. Like, unless you want to end up at that small-time level, stay exactly where you're at and just ride it out until that full-time job comes open.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of value in sometimes just being patient and, like you said, staying where you're at. A lot of people want to job hop when it's not, they don't really have a clear path of why they're job hopping or a reason. They're just doing it to do it. But a lot of times you stay in the right place, good things will happen. So
good things happen. You know, just like me, my intentions of being at App State, I had no intentions of staying at App State until I retired. Like, that was me going back to college and the mid-major school. That's where I really wanted to be, and I loved my time at the high school. And I don't look at it any different, you're not at big time. I'm like, it doesn't matter. Big time's where you make it, and for me, I put 100% effort into every place that I've ever been and created relationships and worked with kids. And I didn't care if you were the first one off the bench, the last one off the bench, or never off the bench. I'm going to give you the same 100% that I give to everybody. And I think people could do that, but you are so right that people are so quick to hop and to leave and not finish out what they went there for. The grass is greener, and it's not the grass is green where you water it, where you put the time and effort in it. And no job is going to be perfect. I will 100% tell you that you're not going to have a job that is 100% perfect. It's what it is, that's the life of athletics, unfortunately. And for me, like, I love my time at App State. I love my time at the high school level at Franklin High School, and when I own my business, the people that I met and the connections I made, I miss that. There's lots of things that I miss about places, and being here at ASU has been a awesome experience as well. But I put 110% into everything that I do. So, and I'm not going to treat it any differently.
I love that mindset. So, kind of moving forward a little bit. So, how is your friendship with House Big Joe Ken? Right? How has that affected your thought process as a coach?
My thought process as a coach. So, I will tell you, I've known House since 1996.
Okay.
So Nevada, Reno,
Yeah.
near that state. So, and as you know, my husband Rich does the PBR professional bull riders.
Mm-hmm.
So they used to have an event in Boise all the time. So I met House by traveling with Rich to PBR, which is in Boise, and I went over and I met him and Rich Gray and House for Repackage at Boise.
Okay.
And just seeing how he set things up and his thought process of training and getting away from the heavy, light, medium days and his whole creating the tier system, it really kind of made sense. Like his whole thought process of training an athlete, a true athlete, not a pound lifter, not a weightlifter, a true athlete, a football player, a soccer player, a volleyball player, made sense to me. And he's smart. Like he's another one, you surround yourself with good people, just like Charles is one of the smartest guys I've ever met. House is absolutely one of the smartest guys I've ever met. Like he's done a lot of great things. I will say, ironically, when I was here the first time at ASU, it was the hardest job I ever had, but the best job I ever had was working for him. Because I come to work for him. We kept in touch for 1996 till my whole time at Nevada through Boston College. And then when I left Boston College, I came here to ASU. Hardest job I ever had, best job I ever had. He expects a lot of his assistants and staff, and but he's fair. He's a really, really good person. And he's changed a lot in his career too. He's changed a lot, and he means well, and I think he's very well respected and has done a lot of great things. Done a lot of great things.
What if you had to pick one thing? What's like one of the biggest takeaways that you would say you took away from working with him? It's a tough question.
It's a tough question because there's a lot of good ones. There's a lot of good ones. One, I think, and I said this before, but lifting is lifting, playing is playing. The best weight room guys or girls aren't always your best on the field or ice or court. And I think learning how to train your athletes to be athletic and to beat athletes as opposed to lifters. Record boards are nice, and create some type of competition, and record boards are kind of a cool thing, but it's not always about the numbers. It's not always about how many 400-pound bench presses you can have on a football team, or 600-pound squatters you can have on a team, because doesn't really mean jack.
Yeah.
And it's the end of the day.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, that's a really good one. A lot of people need to hear it, because a lot of people think weight room is the end all be all. So, you gotta think of why the kids are there, and they're not there to lift.
Yeah.
More than likely.
The number one thing the weight room does for kids is build confidence.
Yeah.
I think it absolutely 100% builds confidence and gives kids a perception of things that they couldn't do before, I could do now, and it makes them feel pretty good about themselves.
Yeah.
To get that first chin up or that first pull up, to squat, their body weight, or 2.5 times their body weight, or to bench press their body weight.
Yeah.
To be able to do that, or get the plates, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. I think it builds team chemistry. To the high school level, even the private sector. So when I was in the private sector, I owned my own business. I worked with some local high schools, and I would never. So in my mindset, some of these private sector, places, facilities, all they look at as these kids is dollar signs. So I'm straight after football, and football guys, you need to come to my facility and you need to train. It's not what it should be. If you're a football player, if you're a high school football player, a high school volleyball player, you should be training with your program at your high school. 100%.
Agree. Yeah.
100%, because it builds team chemistry. Kids see how hard you're working and how hard you're working. They don't know what you're doing on the side, or going to another facility, or what the other facility you're going to, what they even know, or do they know how to train athletes? Or are they doing dumb shit? Or bench pressing every day. Hey, I'm going to bench press every day, and it's going to help me. It's really not. Or doing one of the latest fad workouts, that's out there too. It's not going to help you. So I think kids need to train with their respective high schools. I think that's really, really important as well.
No, I agree. And then kind of moving forward to this next question, right? So you've talked a lot on this in various podcasts, or at conferences and in various conversations, right? But how has your journey been as a female strength coach?
So it has not been easy, but I would say for the same respect, for some guys, it hasn't been easy.
Mm-hmm.
In the beginning, it wasn't easy for me from a standpoint of there wasn't a whole lot of direction of women. Bed Stone was like the first female strength coach that worked with football at I can't say that. I can't say that other university down South Bus. I love Bed Stone. So, there wasn't a lot of women. There was, Stacy Torman. There was Ray Ellsworth. There's, Andrea Hootie. Like, there's some really good female strength coaches. In my era when I started, there wasn't a lot. Like, at Nevada Reno, I was the first assistant strength coach at Nevada Reno and the first female. And then Boston College, I was the second assistant ever hired at BC and the first female. So there's been a lot of positions, a lot of things that have grown since that. Getting a GA position was really, really hard. I think it was probably no harder than what people go through today. Back then it was 60 handwritten letters.
Oh, right? Yeah.
So, hey, here's my resume. I'm looking for a GA position. Now it's quick email or whatever. Here's my resume, looking for, and it's all in who you know.
Yeah.
And honestly, the only reason why I got my first job at Nevada Reno was because I made a connection with Mike Jones, who's the head strength coach, was the head strength coach there. I came out to visit. I went out to go ski out there.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, I'd like to come by and visit and see what you do at the university and, talk shop. And he's like, yeah, sure, come on out. So I went to meet him, and a year later, he sought me out. I was down at, NAU doing my GA, and he's like, hey, we have an assistant job now open. Are you interested? So so whether it was back then, making connections with people, or even now, you need to, as a young strength coach, you have to make connections with people. And it's really, it's not about who you know. So I can know a lot of people, but those people know me.
Yeah.
If I'm going out there, so Mike Bewley said it best. He's like, it's not who you know, it's who knows you.
Yeah.
And that's exactly good, bad, or indifferent. You have to put yourself out there and make a sacrifice to go visit good people. Go out and visit, Donnell at the Citadel. Go call House. House would let people, visit. He'll talk shop to anybody.
Yeah.
There's lots of great strength coaches out there that are more than happy to talk shop with people and let you come into their facility and visit, and you make an impact. And if you, as a young strength coach, can make an impact on them, it's a pretty amazing thing. And they'll want to call you back and say, hey, I have a job open, I have paid internship open, I have GA open. Are you interested? So you have to really do what you can to make an impact on that person and follow up as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. Do you think that some of your powerlifting success has kind of offset some of the sexism that can be seen in the profession?
Yes, absolutely. So when I first started, part of my thing of me competing was to show, was like, I deserve to be here, was to say, like, you know what, I'm competing, I'm lifting, I'm just as strong as you guys, and I know what I'm talking about, but I have to prove the fact that I know what I'm talking about by practicing what I preach. And that's one of the biggest things I think women can do is practice what you preach. I'm not saying you have to become an IPF world champion like me. I'm not saying you have to compete for the U.S. women's team like me. You need to prove yourself. You need to train. You need to actually step foot in a weight room and squat and bench and do, whether you do squat-tober or whatever it is, which I'm not doing. I'm going to do dead number.
A little plug. Yeah.
But I think I really think for me, it set the groundwork for me. And again, when I started, there was a handful of women out there in our profession. Yeah. So we had to kind of set the trail and blaze the trail a little bit and hey, we deserve to be here too, and we're just as good as our male counterparts, and I think for me, it's definitely helped.
Okay.
The hard thing for me now is, one of the questions when I came actually back to ASU and interviewed back here was, well, you're a power lifter. Yeah, so what? I'm a power lifter. Like, I'm not taking my program and I'm not saying, okay, here's my program and this is what I do and this is what our athletes here do. Yeah. So it's also educating. So it's kind of come a little bit full circle where it could backfire on you a little bit, being a competitive power lifter, weightlifter, or whatever. You just need to be able to educate and explain to your coaches, like, hey, I'm a lifter, yes, but it's not to train my athletes.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. So can female strength coaches do to kind of stand out, right? So those are kind of some of the basics that you mentioned, some of the baseline things that everyone should be doing. But what can they do to kind of separate themselves in that pool?
Separate yourself. Again, it's going out there and meeting. So it's no different than the guys. Go out there and meet people.
Yeah.
Go out and make connections with people. Don't be afraid to call someone and talk to someone or apply for an internship that you don't think you're going to get because it's with men's basketball or with football. Like, don't be afraid to apply for that. I was afraid that I wasn't for every job that I applied for or every internship or GA that I applied for that I wasn't going to get. I wouldn't have a job,
Yeah.
So don't be afraid just because, it's football, it's not. And I will tell you, way back, so when I was in my undergrad at Miami, Ohio, and I was in athletic training. So athletic training was where I first started, and everyone's like, athletic training, there's not really a whole lot of women female athletic trainers in the NFL, NHL, professional level sports. So one of the girls who was a GA or was an intern, I should say intern, she was an undergrad at Miami, Ohio. She's like, well, I want to apply for an NFL internship. So she changed her name to initials of being DJ and her real name on her resume. I mean, that's some shit we had to do back then.
Yeah.
It's like, if I wanted to apply for an internship at a predominantly a male sport, you kind of have to use your initials or use your nickname. So for me, I could have used, I used Lee. So
did not know that was your nickname. Okay.
Nickname is actually Slow Twitch.
I was about to say, yeah, I've heard that one.
Or LB.
Okay.
So, yeah, those are my two.
Gotcha.
Kevin O'Neill coined LB on me. So.
Fair enough. Okay.
Yeah, but it does. Those are things we dealt with, 20 years ago, and now it's not really like that. There's more acceptance in the athletic training world, in the strength conditioning world of having females. Look at Andrea Hootie. She's been with men's basketball at Kansas for I don't know how many years.
Yeah.
She was at UConn when I was at Boston College. So she's done phenomenal. And I think people sometimes need to look past gender a little bit.
Yeah.
Some old school don't. They don't. At Boston College, they definitely didn't. It's when I was inherited at Boston College, I was told that women should be working with women. That did not go over well with me.
Yeah.
That's who I worked for before who hired me. He was Poito was phenomenal, and then when new head guy came in, women should be working with women. Go screw yourself. That's me.
I love it. No. I mean, and that's honest and real, and that's those same people are the same people with some of those training methods that might not necessarily be the best for the athletes as well. Because they have a very closed-minded thinking. So it's a double-edged sword for them in more than one way.
Yeah.
So, and then we're kind of moving forward to in the profession of, like you said, equality and acceptance and all that kind of stuff. But what can males do to kind of push that forward even more in that direction of equality? Male strength coaches, if there is one thing that they can do.
Two things.
Okay.
Bluntly, don't be a dick. Bluntly.
Yeah.
And don't be closed-minded.
Yeah.
Don't be so closed-minded just because of a person's gender that they can't do the job. There's many guys out there that I can out-coach and coach circles around.
Yeah.
Flat out. Doesn't matter.
Plain and simple, yeah.
Plain and simple. I can out-coach them on clean snatch, Olympic lifts, power lifts, strongman. I competed in 2003, World's Strongest Woman. I taught Scott Caulfield how to flip her first tire.
Little call-out right there.
Nope. I taught Martin Rooney how to flip his first tire.
Okay.
So, float his first Atlas stone out here. So, doing all those fun things and teaching people just because, you're a female, so you should know how to do that is kind of garbage in my mind. So,
yeah.
So,
no, I agree. No, that's awesome. Okay. So what are some resources that have had a big impact on you, whether it be a book or an article or a seminar or just a conversation with a person?
There's a lot.
Okay.
Definitely a lot. I think everywhere I go, I always try to learn something. And I think people need to remember that you can learn things from your interns. You can learn from your assistant. So there's things that, I'm not computer savvy. So for me, technology, I'm a technology moron. So I rely on my interns and PAs to help me on the technology side and assistance. So I think that's huge. You know, you can always learn something from someone, even if they're in a quote unquote lesser position than you. And I think I've always done that. You know, I always love listening to Travis Mash. You know, Barbell Life, his podcasts are really good. Martin Mooney's podcasts are really good. I still go back to Elite FTS and read articles on Elite FTS. You know, there's just a lot of good. There's a lot of good information out there, and there's a lot of garbage information out there. You know, there's a lot of people out there that they do one meet now, and they're like, I'm going to do online coaching. I've done meet, and I went 4 for 9, but I think I'm like, you know, those things as far as like, you know, training techniques and things like that. As far as professional development, you know, right now I'm reading Chop Wood, Carry Water, and also Power of Positive Team. You know, I've gone through all the John Gordon books, and I think sometimes being in a managerial position, you got to get away from the technical stuff, and you're, you know, not that you never want to stop learning, but I think sometimes you got to open your mind and read some other things along with it.
No, I agree.
So those are some definite stuff.
I think you mentioned like 3 important points out of that, right? So one of them being stay open-minded, right? So that's a very important point. Another one being that some of these young strength coaches need to really look at who their idols or their mentors are, right? Because a lot of you can sound cool behind a computer screen, but what have you actually accomplished, you know?
Absolutely.
And that's huge. That's very huge. And then I think the third thing is just never stop learning, right? So altogether, I think those are 3 central tenets that every successful person, whether it be in this profession or in other profession, have taken to heart. There it is. Yeah.
That's my next thing.
Yeah. No, I love it. And that's exactly, you got to consistently have a growth mindset, whether it's, you know, strength and conditioning stuff, but like you said, that stuff can get stale and that stuff can get old. So the stuff that separates coaches, right, are the stuff outside that realm, because then they bring it in and they make it relevant. So I think that's really important to keep a hold of. And then moving into this last segment here, just kind of some rapid fire questions, right? So if you have any, what are some quotes that you live by?
Couple things. I would say work hard, and stay humble. I think those are 3 huge things that for me, like, I've worked my ass off all my life, and I will continue to work my ass off for everything that I do, whether it's in my job or competing, or, you know, that's just me. I'm used to working 16, 18 hours a day, or training, or doing whatever. So stay humble, you know, even though some people, you know, they rise to the top and they're at the top of the game, and, you know, they start changing their personality and they start acting like a jerk. And that's the biggest turn off. And you know, remember where you came from, you know, you got to remember where you came from, because you started just on the bottom, just like everybody else. And these guys, they climb the ladder really fast, and they don't know how to handle themselves at all. And then I would say, you know, same thing. Don't forget where you came from, but never lose sight of where you're going. Never lose sight. You know, have dreams, have aspirations. For me, as far as dreams and aspirations, I wanted to make a 3rd World Games team, and I did. You know, and I wanted to place. So I got a bronze medal at World Games last year in 2017. Kind of semi-retired, and I kind of might come back in 2019 nationals.
Here we go. Yeah, I love it. Looking forward to it.
Yeah,
oh, that's awesome.
Don't quit.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Those are good ones. So what is the best advice you've ever been given?
Don't quit. So for as many times as I've wanted to quit, you know, I've broken down, cried, like, this isn't for me. You know, I can't do it anymore. Working 20 hours, kind of had like mental, like, anxiety, like, oh my God, what am I doing? You know, things happen for a reason, and things will always get better. So definitely don't quit.
I love it. Simple. What is the worst advice you've ever been given?
Quit.
Okay. Yeah. Easy one. Okay.
I've been told to quit.
Yeah.
You know, I've been told, you know, it's not going to happen. Never going to happen. You know, you're not gonna end up at the level that you're going to be. You're never going to do this. You're never going to do that. You know, you just quit now and find another job or find another profession. Just quit. It's not easy. This profession is not easy, and for me, I don't have, yes, I'm married. I don't have kids, so it's a little bit easier in that aspect. I have 5 per kids, but no kids.
Yeah.
And so it's been a little bit easy. But in the beginning, for me, it's like being a female and being this profession. Family was like not going to happen.
Yeah.
So I kind of went the route of lifting and all that to kind of was my stress relief and all my stuff and having animals. But yeah, people tell me, I've been told early in my career, just quit because it's not going to happen, or you're not going to get this or not going to get that. And I just kind of stuck my middle finger up and said, not going to quit. So
yeah. Well, it's worked out. So congrats. Yeah, I love it. What is one of the biggest struggles you've had to overcome, whether it's in your career or personal life or just in general?
I think a lot of people, and me included, I struggled a lot with depression, anxiety, and, disordered eating when I was younger. And I think for so long for me that, I wanted to be that size 2 person, going through high school, going through college. And it took me a long time to accept myself for who I was, vertically challenged, horizontally gifted, you've heard before. Never going to be a size 2. And I kind of use my assets of, hey, I'm strong and I can compete. And that's kind of where lifting took me. Lifting was my kind of my saving grace. Like it was something I was good at. And I kind of go back with, I think lifting builds confidence in our athletes and our younger generation. And it's something that did for me.
Yeah.
So it's, every day isn't going to be perfect. And, you make the best of what you're given. And I think I've done pretty well for myself and hopefully it helped others along the way, get to achieve their dreams and what they want. And I think we've had a lot of good interns come out of a lot of programs. And, one of the biggest success stories for me is seeing interns that have worked for me for so long ago, or head people now, assistants, run their own programs. And it's pretty amazing to see where they were and then, where they went to and where they are. So
no, I love it. And then last question here. So what are some projects, or what are you currently working on, and how can people kind of reach out and follow you and follow your journey?
So I'm not exactly technically savvy, as you know, but I am on Instagram at Shocker Liane Blyn, and on Facebook Shocker Liane Blyn, and Twitter I think Liane Blyn.
Keeping it consistent. Yeah.
So, usually I post all my lifting stuff or something good that's going on, in terms of with our athletes and all that.
Yeah.
Working on right now, I'm just trying to get, Rich Winter and I are trying to get our department dialed in and going. And I think we have a pretty awesome staff here and a pretty awesome staff with Joe Connolly over in football. I think we're going to do some pretty good things here at ASU. We have some projects that we want to do here and get our internship program up and rolling and collaborate with exercise physiology like we did with Travis Triplett at App State, things like that. So that's kind of what our projects are now as far as community or school-wide stuff. So and then I think my project is getting my ass back on the platform to compete.
There it is. We've all been waiting for it. So
in May.
Awesome.
So that's about it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Liane. It's been great catching up. It's always a pleasure. So looking forward to releasing this, and hopefully we can catch up again soon.
Definitely. Thanks for having me on. It's good seeing you.
You as well.
Once again, thank you for joining me. And if you enjoyed the podcast, please head on over to iTunes and give me a review or a 5-star rating, or both. If you all have any suggestions for people that you would like to hear from or topics that you would like to hear discussed, do not hesitate to shoot me an email, message on Instagram, or whatever form of social media that you prefer. I would love to hear from you. Next week we'll have another exciting guest. So until then, this is the Gamut of Performance Podcast.